Appamada and its programs are supported by your generosity, and your generosity and support makes such a difference. You can find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org. Thank you.
Hi there. Good morning. So good morning to all of you, and also a special welcome to the people who might be listening in from Sanghas in Madison, Wisconsin, England, Switzerland, Chicago, Alpine, and Hawaii. Welcome. To begin, I'd like to make some announcements first. First of all, the precepts class has begun, started, I believe, last week, and Todd is the main lead on that. And so I encourage you, if you're interested in participating in that, you can probably still get in because they were just overview last time. So contact Todd if you are interested in that. It's a hybrid offering, so whether you're online or here, you can participate in that. The second thing I wanted to mention is we have a calling for flower arrangers. So anybody you have to be on site for that. So anybody who's willing and able, you'd be most welcome to come join us. No experience necessary. We'll show you the ropes. It's not very difficult, and it's a once a month, more or less, thing. So we'd love to have you. Contact me or Anne. Either one of us can give you further information on that. And the third thing is just a heads up that the end of this month, we're having a short intensive. That'll be Todd and I that will be offering that. And so just be ready for information to come out shortly, the registration, and then a description of it. So just so you know, put it on your calendar if you're interested in that. Okay. Anything else? Anybody know that needs to be said now? Part of an announcement.
Party.
Oh yeah. Can you? There's a Sangha party, and there's an email that just went out about it.
19th?
No.
Yeah.
It's the 19th?
18th.
18th? Okay.
7 to 9.
7 to 9 here, and there's going to be music, so that'll be really nice, along with snacks. And for those online, you can participate as well. Just you'll have to bring your own snacks. So, all righty. I think that's it as far as announcements go. So today, as we know here, especially in the United States, it's the 4th of July, meaning it's Independence Day. And so I was thinking about that in preparation for this talk. And the thing that I was thinking about was freedom. And in that case, it was freedom from tyranny, from our former power that ruled us, the UK. And but it also meant freedom, a lot of freedoms. And so I was thinking about that and what freedom is for us as Buddhist practitioners. So I have been reading a book, the most recent book, published posthumously by Joko Beck. It's called Ordinary Wonders in Life and Practice. And so I was reading one of the Dharma talks, and I think that this one kind of addresses a little bit of freedom. We're not going to be talking about dependent origination, but we'll ultimately end up talking about how to free ourselves, or at least weaken our core beliefs. So that's where we're headed. All right. So most of us, I'm gonna use these. Most of us see life as good, it's good life, or life is bad, or life is meaningless, or life is dramatic, or life is historic. We all have our own views on that. There's not just one view. Everybody has their own variety, what they think about life. And Joko says the problem, well, not the problem, it's just a fact. We may not be able to articulate or be conscious of our strong views about this, about what life is. But in fact, we're guided by it in our actions. And in fact, we're dictated at times by it. So it's really an important thing to be able to look at our core beliefs, our views on life. And she also says that, in fact, life is not a thing at all. We call it a lot of things, but it's not a thing. And I can make that point because it's not defined by time or space. It has no duration. It has no space, in particular space. And yet it's everywhere, it never stops. And it is change itself. So we can't just narrow it in, although our minds do that. It's not true. It's not true. It's this thing. It can't be. It changes all the time. It occurs everywhere, all the time. It may not be here, but shortly something will crop up. Life is everywhere and unfolds everywhere all the time. And we have these general views that we have, our philosophies about the way things are, about life, just flow through our core beliefs. And to add to it, we have our moods, and our moods further flavor our views. So, as I was saying earlier, everybody has their own variety on these things. Some people consider life as confusing, dramatic, or they consider life to be something dull and plod through it. And others have kind of an anxious, interesting that she says it, an anxious mood. I never thought of anxiety being the mood, but in any case, there's this quality of anxiousness that we bring to our views. And yet, we have to remember that our true self couldn't possibly be anxious. It's not possible. It's not, our true self is not anything, and life can't be anxious. So it's our conditioned self, obviously, that's it's bringing up these different views and moods. It's going on all the time, whether we recognize it or not. So we may blame our moods on various things like the weather or physical conditions and so forth. But if we look at it more closely, what those moods, where they come from, it may not be so. She gives an example about, she has these, Joko had these ideas about San Diego and Hawaii. And she hated, the humidity in San Diego was unbearable. And then she'd go to Hawaii and she'd say, isn't the warm, moist air just wonderful? It was, the same humidity that she had back home. So it's just interesting that we have these ideas about things. So she also says when we think about practice, we have sometimes what happens to us is we may get bored. We're sitting there for long periods of time, particularly in sashimi intensive, and we become bored. And we want to look at our watch, but we can't. And it seems like an eternity before the bell rings. And so we have this boredom, and we just say, okay, that's boring. But what she suggests is that actually we look at our boredom, look closely at it. What's really going on there? So again, what she says is the core belief is behind that. And she talks about her own core belief was that life is a kind of disaster. Imagine what it is to live with that core belief. And so an aspect of that core belief is that she's always hoping to feel better, because she's this impending disaster all the time. So was looking, hoping to find some way to fix herself so that she could be okay, to feel good. And isn't that what we all do with our core beliefs? So if we think of, if we're doing Zen practice, we're sitting, maybe that will fix me. Maybe that'll take care of me when we get bored or when we're anxious. So we're bored because nothing's getting fixed. We're sitting there, nothing's getting fixed. So we're really disappointing ourselves. We say it's dull, nothing going on here. Why am I even doing this? And then we also look at Zen practice as a cure for this. And we also look at external things. So the classic thing is romance, right? Seeking a partner who's going to complete us and make everything all right. And of course, it's probably not too long into it, we realize that's not really working. We get really disappointed, and it's not what happens. So then we get disappointed and bored or what have you. And so this is this desire hoping to get fixed, for things to be better. And we put that desire on a lot of different things, even little momentary sort of hits of feeling better. So, anything. If we watch sports games, I'm not really into that, but that's an example. If we have our team and really hyped up about that and they win and it's like so exciting and we feel better for a little while. Or we have, politicians that are running for office and, we're hinging our happiness on this person, right? Things are going to be better, my God. And well, they won the election, it feels really good, but then we get into the reality of, the day-to-day, some things go well and some things just don't. And we get to feeling incomplete again. So then we go back to practice and we're sitting there saying, this is stupid, why am I sitting here? My legs hurt, it's hot, I'm just uncomfortable. Wow. Wasn't Zen about joy and wonder? But again, she says, we need to look at the boredom. And we need to feel the fear that's at the base of it. What's beyond that? So we sit with it. And the fear, she says, arises because inside of us, we don't feel like we're fixing anything. We're just staying as we are. We have these ideas, I want to be different. I want to have things different than the way they are. I want my mother to look at me. That's my old chant, my mantra. It's hot. I want. And so we think we need something that we don't have and don't feel we are, so we experience want. In terms of pain, Becky, I believe, is an expert on this one. To really just surrender to pain and be friendly with it, to embrace it, is probably not what we thought this practice was about. We thought it was becoming enlightened. But actually, Joko says, enlightenment is not some tremendous state of being. It's just simply being with what is. Oh, man. So when we're sitting in pain and boredom, we start thinking, man, I hate this. I don't like this at all. But if we notice what we're thinking, but we don't get stuck in it, we don't attach to our thinking, and just experience the pain, the boredom, something bigger starts to surround it. We can't experience wholeness of life or sacredness without including everything. We can't experience wholeness of life or sacredness without including everything. That includes pain and boredom, anxiety. So we can be thankful, actually, when boredom shows up, because it means you have space to experience what's beneath it. So that's something that we can work with. And as one realizes that, something develops in you when you keep sitting, and you develop a certain steadiness, right? The longer you sit, the more steadiness takes charge. So there's another thing that we do, another circumstance, where we anticipate life. I'm going to vow right here, I'm the great anticipator. I am, back in the days of Lotus Lake, which was some of Bhaktivinoda's first retreats, it would be 2 weeks out. I hadn't been to retreats much. And I would be so anxious, I couldn't think or do anything. Sorry, I'm busy. I'm being anxious. The world had to stop for it. It was really awful. So we often feel something, in this case, it's anxiety of the situation, but we miss out entirely on what's going on in our life during that time. And that's the sad part. It keeps us from being aware or noticing the situation we're in at this moment. So, now I don't stress about intensive so much. I don't. What I stress about now is talking in front of people. And so anyway, I think it's endless, but it's getting better. I think these things get better over time. The more we experience them, and the more we sit with it again. And so, and we also do this when, before big events, or when we're going to go to a party or go be around a bunch of people and we may not know them, and we want to impress them on some way, that we know something, or maybe, I don't know, or interesting, or just even likable. Depends on what your bar is. And so, again, we waste a lot of time thinking about that instead of being where we are at the moment that we're thinking about all this stuff. Most of our life is spent in this space, concerning ourselves about the future, planning for it. So during this time, we're not experiencing, and what's going on really is we're being pushed around by that core belief of ours. We're pushed into our moods and our opinions. So, and Joko said from her perspective that this was true of students who would say, after a long time of she'd been teaching something, she'd say, this is really a great teaching. I didn't realize it, and of course they just put it to the side, I don't know. They had their own opinions about it for the longest time, and finally it was okay. That's what we're doing all the time. and our experiences have little to do with our anticipation, in fact. So let's talk about weakening a core belief. So our core belief, no, our true self doesn't know about ambition. Now, ambition, and she talks about it, is motivated by the belief that there is something wrong with us that can be fixed if we can get to a certain place. So our true self doesn't know about ambition or about anticipating life. Our true self it doesn't become busy with thinking, waiting, measuring, or worrying. It's just perceiving things second by second. And I would encourage you just for a moment, just stop everything and just check in. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? Okay. So that's it. That's it. Instead of anticipating, you can be here right now. Just remember, just stop, pay attention. What's going on right now? So we humans will never be able to completely be without thought or anticipation, but if we sit regularly, whether we're bored or not, it weakens this ego process. It weakens our attachment to our core belief. At the base of this core belief, the core belief is telling us what life should be like instead of allowing the space to experience life as it is. How is it right now? So when we weaken attachment to our belief and how things are, we're thrown back, this is very interesting, we're thrown back into our actual experience. And that is the gateway to true self. So when we're actually experiencing what's going on, that's the access to true self. To see what upsets you is to see it through your core beliefs. But the work is noticing the feeling or the thought, becoming aware of the core belief. It's the core belief that is animating it, and then being with whatever arises without response or reaction. I'm going to read it again. So the work is noticing the feeling or thought, becoming aware of the core belief animating it, then being with whatever arises without response or reaction. So, for example, let's just say, so she says Zen is a life that eventually has a transforming element to it. You can't push your way into true self. The idea of the core belief is in the mind. But when you return to actually experiencing pain or what have you, without naming it, you get out of dual nature of thinking. So, again, let's take up anger. If we experience anger, we have to give up our core belief for a moment and just settle into the pain of it. And if we give up that core belief for just a moment, there you are. Here's the true self. And if we stay in non-dualistic experiencing, even for a few seconds, it will slowly transform us. That's what our practice is about. Over time, we develop so that we can rest there for more than 2 to 3 seconds. I call this a slow process. But that's okay. We don't want to let go of our core belief. We don't. We're used to it. That's who we are, right? It's dear to us. It's a hard sell until we know the true self. Until we've met that, we know that. And that's who we think we are, and that's who we think we are is the core belief. But once you know true self, then you know the core belief is all. And the practice is the conduit, and this is true Zen, and that's what we're about here. So that's the end of my talk. Are there any questions or comments or anything? We have an exercise. Maybe you'll talk then. Ah, Kim. I'm scared.
So I'm thinking about what is the core belief of Buddhism, and it seems to be the idea that we can end suffering. Would you agree?
Well, I think right offhand, I'd say Buddhism is a concept, so we're not talking about concepts necessarily. I mean, we're talking about us and our feelings, you know, how we.
Well, but yeah, I have that feeling that we can end suffering.
Ah, okay. Is that a problem?
Well, sometimes it's certainly a challenge sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's something that draws us here.
Absolutely. But I guess the distinction I'm trying to make is that you want to, what did you say? How did you say it again?
And suffering.
It's a challenge or to end suffering or
Suffering. Yeah. I mean, I don't see that as, if that's your core belief, I'd say you're really in a good place. It may be challenging, but that's not a problem. But if your core belief is that, you know, it's not worth getting up out of bed today or any day, or, you know, you narrow yourself so much, that's a pretty broad, wonderful thing, I think. I wouldn't see that as a bad core belief at all.
you wouldn't see what as a core belief.
Ending suffering
As a bad core belief.
as a bad core belief.
Oh, no, not a bad one. No,
Yeah, so I wouldn't worry about it.
I'm not worried.
Okay, I'm glad. Okay, so, any other comments? We'll go on to the exercise.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this idea of like being with life as it is, as a resolution of sorts to this kind of anxiety, is something we talk about a lot, I think, in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
How does one know that one's doing that?
How do you know when you're at a place where you're experiencing life as it is? I have an opinion about that, which I'll share with you. I think you know when you're in the present moment. You're aware. I think it's something that you know when it happens. To say anything more, I can't think of anything more to say about that. So, all right, so what I'd like to do, we're kind of odd, but that's okay. So maybe we'll get into pairs. And so what I thought we might do, just kind of as a way to get a feel of this, of what she was talking about, is we could work with something simple as the anticipation. And so I would suggest that each of us, think of a time when, and don't think about something, the most heaviest thing that you were anticipating. You just going to do things that aren't that fully charged. But just something that you was really stressed out and anticipating, in anticipation of. And to see if you can get in touch with that, and then get in touch with the kind of stressed out feeling that you were feeling then, unless you're feeling it right now, and that's even better for the purposes of the practice. And then just be with it and try to get beyond just the anxiety of it or the discomfort of it and go to the actual feeling that's behind it, like sadness or fear. So if you can get to that feeling, and so we'll each take, we probably need to end, oh, we don't have much time. Let's take 15 minutes, who's on a turn? Cody, let's take,
That'll be me today.
oh, it's you, okay, I'm sorry. So maybe let's take 15 minutes to do this, so we have time to do our close down. And so we'll get into pairs, and each of you will think of something that caused you had some stress about, and anticipating the future, and then just spend some time by yourself in pairs thinking about it, and then try to get to the feeling. And then after, say, 10 minutes, no, let's say, 10 minutes of, or maybe 5 minutes of doing that, then spend some time talking with one another about how that process went, what worked, did it work at all, did you get to the feeling behind it, did you have any sense of it, and if you did, did anything, what came up from that, what did you think about it, or what did you experience from it? So try to go back to the original experience behind the anticipation of anxiety. Does that make sense?
Do you want us to sit silently for 5 minutes, each
Yes.
of us,
Yes,
and drop into the experience?
yes,
And then for 10 minutes, converse?
yes,
Okay.
thank you. So just to finish this off, does anybody have any particular comment they want to make, or something they want to share before we close down and do the ceremony?
Claudine?
Yes, I just want to thank you, Laurie, for proposing this exercise, because it goes very deep beyond, and it was a beautiful sharing also. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm glad. Yes.
I heard something in John's question before about I can't even rephrase the question, but except to say, you had said, well, you kind of know when you're in the present moment, and yet I have a continuing perplexity about that. It's like, okay, so I've gotten to where I can kind of see the contours of core belief number one, but there's core belief one squared that's around that I can't see the contours of, that, and I was talking about this with John, and she had a great suggestion, which I think comes from Stephen Batchelor, his formulation of this, that if you can choose not to be acting on it, whatever that feeling is that you can't quite name, but that you have a sense it could be harmful to yourself or other. But if you can choose not to do that, that is, and I'm saying, well, that's a kind of enlightenment. She says, well, Stephen Batchelor says that is nirvana, which is pretty amazing. Is that close to what you were asking about?
Yeah, that's a good,
Okay.
that's a helpful response.
Anyway, I mean, like Claudine says, this is deep for me. Anyway, I feel like I'll never get to that edge.
I don't think you're alone.